All right. Well, today my guest is Burt Fosse, and he is the chairman of the board of the Ryan D. Offit Huntersville Sportsman's Park. Burt grew up in Red Wing, Minnesota as a graduate of Burnsville High School and worked for many years in Alaska in the medical field, working with anesthesia. Burt moved to Park Rapids in 2002 from Alaska. We'll get into all this in a little bit more detail. And then became involved in trap shooting in the area in about 2015. So welcome, Burt Fosse. Great to have you here.
Zach.
Yep. So, Burt, you lived in Alaska for about 30 years, and before then, you lived down in the Twin Cities, right?
Correct.
So, and I read from something that you had sent over to me that the day that you graduated from school, you went on a hunting trip to Alaska and basically just never came back.
Yeah, came back, but they happened to be looking for an anesthetist in Anchorage, and 4 months later, there I was.
Okay. And so you lived in, was it Anchorage, Alaska for about 30 years?
I was in Anchorage for 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
then went to a little fishing village called Cordova for 2 years, and then Soldotna for 23 years.
Oh, that's very interesting. Okay, so what is it like working in anesthesia in those areas? I imagine it's probably a different experience than it would be in a more, like, I don't know, populated area.
Anchorage and Soldotna was basically like here. It's first-class medical stuff, but when I was up there, I did do a couple of weeks out in the bush, and that was very interesting. That's not what you're used to, but it's what you're trained for.
So you go out there with like a doctor or something like that, and you have to kind of basically do the same job as you would do anywhere else, just under different or more difficult circumstances.
I worked with a ear, nose, and throat physician who had a contract from Native Health Corporation to fix kids' ears.
Yeah.
And did 2 weeks of that.
Mm-hmm. And working with anesthesia, you definitely have to have an eye for detail and precision.
Yes.
Because a lot of us can make minor mistakes in our work, and usually everything is fixable. But with something like that, you kind of have to get it right the first time.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so after your career working in Alaska, you moved to Park Rapids, and I was going to ask you, what drew you to this area rather than going back to, say, the Twin Cities?
Again, growing up in the Twin Cities, I don't like hot summers. And the way we came to this area is my folks had their 50th wedding anniversary out on Long Lake. And my wife, who I met in Alaska, is actually from L.A., and she loves the big trees. And this was in 94, and we were looking for some place to go. We knew we weren't going to retire in Alaska. So I sent her down, and we decided on this temperature zone across the state. So she looked from basically Fargo all the way across to Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
In Alaska, we lived on a lake, so she was looking for lake property, and I knew if she found something she'd like, I knew I'd like it.
Yep. Hey, you can certainly find a lot of lake property around here. So when you were doing your scouting, I suppose you looked at the summer temperatures, and the winter temperatures probably didn't bother you as much as they would if you were coming from somewhere other than Alaska, right? Just out of curiosity, is it the winters, are they more severe here in terms of temperature, or?
My wife will tell you the winters here, because of the wind, is a lot colder than where we lived in Alaska.
Is that right? Okay. Yeah. So you've been involved in trap shooting since 1964, which if I do the math there and it's 2024, I believe that means that you've been involved in trap shooting for 60 years at this point. So just for those who don't know anything about it, what is trap shooting?
Trap shooting is clay target. There's trap, skeet, sporting clays people have probably heard of. Trap shooting more mimics upland game. I tell people when I started trap shooting, I never missed a pheasant for 7 years. And it'll get you on upland game type targets.
So, again, for those who are maybe not as familiar with it, we're using shotguns for that, right?
Correct.
Okay. And the shotgun blast has pellets as opposed to a single projectile, right? Yep. Because some people are not going to have any idea what this is. Okay, and so we started with this in 1964, 1965. Did you do that more as a way to sort of train yourself as a hunter, or how did you get involved in it?
Basically, I worked for a veterinarian, and he used to shoot in Iowa, and so I first started shooting on his club teams, and then started registered shooting after that. First gun I used was an old 1897 16 gauge pump. And in trap shooting, there is no differentiate between the caliber or the gauge of the gun you're using. Whereas in skeet, there's 410, 28, 20, 12 gauge categories.
Right.
In trap, it's all 12.
It's all 12, or you could use
you can.
Something else, but it would be a disadvantage to you.
A big disadvantage.
So where was this? Where was the first time
this
you
was
shot?
Down in the cities. In fact, I shot a club called West End Gun Club in Rosemont.
Okay.
And it's still there today.
Is that right?
Yeah.
How many of the trap clubs that existed back then are still there? I mean, you just mentioned one of them, but do you know of any others that are still there that have been around for many years?
The South St. Paul Rod and Gun Club is still there.
Yeah. I've been to that one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most of the others have moved to more rural areas, and even now they're being built up over.
Well, and it's definitely increased in popularity over the years. So I would imagine, well, maybe not. You can tell me.
It was fairly popular, but it was dying out. The gun clubs were having a lot of problems. They were struggling for members. It's not a cheap sport, as you know, and more it happens of kids that start shooting when they're young. All of a sudden, life happens, and they raise a family, etc. And then when they get into their 40s and 50s and have some more disposable income, oh yeah, I'd like to try that again. Mm-hmm. And what has saved trap shooting is the high schools.
Yep.
The high school sport.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get to that. So you got involved in 2015 with the Park Rapids Clay Dusters. And so there's a difference between the Clay Dusters and the RDO Huntersville Sportsman's Park, right?
Correct.
So what is the Park Rapids Clay Dusters?
The Park Rapids Clay Dusters was formed as a high school team, and I was not involved their first year. Mm-hmm. But their president is Jared Hoffs, mm-hmm. and they were formed specifically to fundraise for the high school. The schools itself don't provide any funding to the team. It's all their own fundraising to come up with the money.
So that kind of makes it a unique sport when
Correct.
It comes to high school, because all the other sports receive funding. Right?
Correct.
Is there been any kind of push at all, given the rise in popularity of the sport at the high school level, to maybe change that?
I don't.
There may not be the political will in this state.
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
I think politics would stand in the way.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so organizations like the Park Rapids Clay Dusters have to exist in order for these high school teams to thrive, basically.
Correct. And for Monaga, it's the Monaga Bird Busters, and for Sebeka, it's the Sebeka Trap Team.
Okay. And so my next question was going to be, what is the mission of the Clay Dusters? But it seems like it's to promote and to raise funds for the high school trap team.
Yeah, I got involved with the Clay Dusters as an assistant coach, mm-hmm. and so I'm really not in on their philosophies,
Yep.
etc., of exactly what their mission is. But yes, it's to provide a quality, safe area for kids to shoot. The interesting thing with the high schools is it goes with the not the high school league, but with the organization it is. They have over 35,000 members around the country in it. There has never been an accident in this sport in the high school level.
That is amazing. So what organization has 35,000 members?
This is the U.S. Clay Target League.
And so the Dusters would be like sort of a subgroup or member group of the larger group. That's an excellent record. And I do want to talk about safety a little bit here later. So sometime around 2015, when you started to get involved, there was this need for a home for the Clay
Correct.
Dusters. Yeah. So what was the state of high school trap at that time?
I know Monaga and Sebeka were both going then. Monaga shot in a pasture, and Sebeka shot down at Nob Hill in Wadena. Here, these kids shot out at Osage. And the trap at Osage I had shot it at before that, but as a single trap. And you had to be quick on the right and left hand target because it disappeared in the trees real quick. And that they were shooting there the first year I got involved, but they had put in for a grant, and the club expanded, got a grant to put in a couple of traps. Which they did, and we shot one season there, and then they had a neighbor file suit.
Yeah, I know. It seems to be sort of a common occurrence with ranges to have neighbors that don't appreciate it for whatever reason. So it was decided then at that point or around that time that the Park Rapids High School team needed a different place to shoot.
But around 2017. There had been two lawsuits filed, and the gentleman was successful on both of them, and Osage just decided they didn't want to put any money into it or fight it anymore, and so they moved one trap to where their old trap was and took the others out. And we were shooting in farmers' fields.
So, and that's probably not a great place to be in terms of convenience or liability for the farmer too, I would suppose. Right?
Or stations and footing for the shooters. Yeah. It's not the same.
Right. So then was it Warren Wormbold?
Warren Wormbold had 2 daughters that shot on the team, and Warren is the head of RD Offutt Farms, and he found 40 acres for us.
And where is that located, that 40 acres?
It's about 3 miles west of Huntersville Outpost on 380th Street.
Okay. And so the property itself had been owned by RDO?
It had been originally Potlatch Corporation, and they sold a bunch of their land. RDO bought it, cleared it, was planning on putting center pivot in it, and there are rocks out there the size of cars, and it became unfeasible for them to farm it.
Okay, so it was just fallow then at that point.
Correct.
All right. And so the highest best use of the land was to donate it to an organization like the Clay Dusters.
And we're glad of it.
So I understand that the Dusters also got a grant too, in connection with the creation of the park.
We shot out there for a spring and a fall. Brought in a big trailer with a generator in it, and then we got our conditional use permit from Wadena County, and we had applied for a grant to the DNR matching grant of $175,000, something like that. And once the conditional use permit was given to us, then we accepted the grant.
And when was ground broken on the construction of what is now the trap range?
Spring of 2018.
How long did it take to construct?
To do the traps, it's the traps themselves. I think we shot on them first in 2020.
Oh, so it took over
Year and a half.
Year and a half. Okay. And I understand that it was a lot of volunteer work that went into it.
It's all volunteer work. If you come out to the range and you drive in, all those signs on the right-hand side, that's money that businesses and individuals gave us before we built it, so we could have the matching money to build it. And nobody has been paid dime one for any time they've put in out there, other than the contractors we had to hire with the big equipment. But otherwise, it's all donation.
And a significant amount of work had to go into it, I'm sure, because
Yes.
it's just, it's beautiful in its construction.
Go out there and drive in that gate. That gate is the brainchild of Robin Walsh, Dick Walsh Forest Products.
Yep. And who did the metal work out there?
The metal work, both on the gate and on the front of the traps.
Yeah.
The doors for the traps were done by Eagle Vision.
Oh, Jerry Brosdahl.
Jerry Brosdahl.
Okay.
On your team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Jerry's the one who got me interested in it, because he thought I would enjoy it. He called me up and said, "Hey, would you like to try it?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I never even considered doing something like that." And I went out and I kind of got hooked on it. Me and another guy from our church, Jake Jones, who likes to go out there. So I really enjoyed it, and I think part of this is we should talk about how people can get involved
Absolutely.
with it. But okay, so describe what is there. For people who haven't been there, and when they go out there the first time, what would they expect to see when they come to the park?
You're going to see a little road going through a field, but again, part of brainchild of Robin. The sign out on the road is really cool. If it says we're open, we're open.
Yeah.
And you drive in the dirt road, you come to that gorgeous gate that I love, and the field is completely fenced to try to keep people out of it and stuff. We drive in around this nice corner with all the trees, and we've tried to leave as much as we can. But then we have 5 traps. Trap shooting is 5 shots from 5 stations, 25 shots per round. Have the 5 traps. We have a clubhouse, which is 40 by 60, with a nice porch up in the front of it. Again, the Robin is the one that is taken this all to heart. And this last year, we dug out our rimfire range. It's nowhere close to done yet, but we'll finish it this summer.
Okay. Yeah, and so that's something else to look forward to there too. So it's a rimfire range, meaning mostly 22 range, or
All rimfire.
all rimfire.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And okay, as far as who uses it, we talked about trap as being a high school sport. So kind of describe how the various high schools use the facility.
And the schools can shoot as much as they want, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
And so we have 3 high schools that use it. Sabika only shoots in the spring. They don't shoot in the fall. Monaga, Park Rapids shoot in the fall. So in the spring, on Sundays, is Sabika, Monaga shootings. Monaga typically has 22 to 24 kids. Sabika usually has around 35. Soldotna shoots Monday, Tuesday. They choose to shoot 2 days a week. As you know, the more targets you shoot, the better you get. And and Park Rapids in the fall usually has between 30 and 35 shooters. I'm sorry, in the spring has 30 to 35 shooters. In the fall, Park Rapids usually has about 36, 37, and Monaga 12 to 18.
Okay. And they're practicing there primarily, right? Or do they hold their competitions there as well?
So they're shooting again with the U.S. Clay Target League, and the USA Target Team in the spring is 1 week of practice. 2 weeks of practice. 1 week is your reserve score, and then 5 weeks of competition. And the teams are divided by the league into different groups. And And Park Rapids, I think, 8 or 9 of the last 10 have won their group.
Okay. Are there divisions in terms of class year or boys and girls or anything like that, or how are the divisions made?
There's no division as far as age or class. What there is a division is by varsity, junior varsity, and novice. It all has to do with your average. 19 and over is considered varsity. 19, I think it's to 14 is considered novice. And under 14, junior varsity, under 14 is novice. They do separate the girls out just for performance, but not for overall scores or anything like that. If the girl's in the top 100 in the state, she shoots in the top 100 in the state.
So it is a mixed league in that sense, then, right?
It is the most beautiful sport because it doesn't make any difference who you are, what you are, what skills you have, or anything else. You come out, you shoot, you participate. You're not sitting on the bench to get in. You are participating.
Right.
Your score counts.
And how many scores do you need to record in order to make that average for the divisions between varsity, junior varsity, and novice?
I think it just goes from right off the bat.
Okay.
But by the time they get to counting anything, it's going to be 5 weeks in.
Yeah.
In springtime, a couple of teams will have tournaments. Like they start shooting the last week of March. So they're shooting for competition by mid-April. In the second week in May, Bemidji has an invitational shoot. Their averages are set by then. Park Rapids holds an invitational. This year it'll be June 2nd. They're done shooting. They're done with their leagues by then, so they're all set. And so our shoot is 2 weeks before, the week before Alexandria. Alexandria State shoot. Every student in the state can compete in it, and over 10 days they have 8,000 and 9,000 kids go through their shooting. The top 40 teams from Alexandria the week after that go to Prior Lake for the Minnesota High School League State Championship.
Okay. And I was just thinking about this, and I can't think of another high school sport where boys and girls would be basically competing against each other and on a truly level playing field. Right? Yeah.
It is totally level, and it doesn't make any difference who or what you are, what your disabilities are. If you're in a wheelchair, there's a wheelchair shooter in Bemidji that beats the tar out of me every time we shoot. And it makes no difference who or what you are. You compete.
Yeah, that's great. Can you earn a letter with the schools in trap shooting?
The letters are earned in the spring for varsity averages.
Okay. And so if you make the varsity average, then you'll earn a letter.
Correct.
And is that true for all 3 schools that are, or all 4?
3 schools are that way, but it's, again, spring only.
Okay. So that's the high school side. And then what use does the public make of the park?
Now we get to the business side.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the high school, to be honest, contributes probably the most. And when we first started this, there's probably 15 to 20 people in this area that are trap shooters, longtime trap shooters, and we started fundraising, obviously. So we decided to have inaugural life members. And we decided to have inaugural members, and so that was a little bit more, and their names are on plaques out the gun club. 19 people did the life membership, 19 families basically.
It's $1,000 for that, right?
$1,500 for that.
Okay. Wow.
And then the regular membership, I think we've got 26 on there, and that was $150. And so they're out there on plaques. And where we are, we're in the middle of nowhere. And so our membership has been struggles. We're open 2 days a week with our CUP, and we're open Tuesday, Saturday, from 4 o'clock to 7:30 on Tuesday, 1 to 5 on Saturday, and we encourage as many people that want to come out and shoot.
Yeah.
We will teach you how to shoot.
Yeah.
We try to be helpful.
So that's what I was going to ask. If a person wanted to just give it a shot. I mean, I didn't mean to make a bad joke there, but what would they? Could they just come out there with and talk to you or someone else who works there and say, I'd like to see if I can do this, or
Absolutely.
How would they do that?
Just come out while we're, hours that we're open, and we try to get that out when we are open. Just come out, and yes, there isn't anybody there that won't help you and take you down on the line and give you pretty good advice and try to keep you straight.
I know that's true from personal experience.
Yes.
So.
The thing that we do require is that you have firearm safety course before you can shoot out there, and that's part of our insurance.
And is that the same requirement as it would be to get like a deer license or something
Correct.
like that?
Correct.
So if you're, I know that I was grandfathered in for that,
Yep.
And so it's the same for the Sportsmen's Club as well. Okay.
Yep.
And just to clarify something here too, we were talking about the clay dusters before, but RDO HSP Incorporated is its own entity that's charged with running the club itself, right?
Correct.
And that's what you're the chairman of the board of that organization.
We are the group that runs the facility.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And I know that we talked about beginners, and then there's also an effort to get women involved in it too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Renee Sargent, I keep patting myself on the back when I got her on my board.
Yeah.
Good job, Burt. She is a very organized lady, and we started doing Ladies' Days. A couple of years ago, we just did one. It was very well attended. We had like 12 or 13 ladies out, and this last year we did 3. This next year we're planning on doing 3, and after they're done shooting, wine is included.
Oh boy, okay, but not before, right?
Not before.
I've tried to speak to many women. Usually, if I try to speak to women, they just kind of do a 180 and turn around and walk the other way before I get the first word out of my mouth. But about doing something like this. And what I hear from a lot of them is that, it's intimidating. I can't hit the target. Everybody's going to laugh at me if I miss the target or if I shoot poorly. What would you say to somebody who had that kind of concern?
I think almost all the ladies that originally came out a couple of years ago, that was their concern. So we started it at 10 o'clock in the morning when nobody else was going to be there. And to be blunt and honest, as you know, nobody cares if you miss a target.
Right.
And if you are struggling, we want to help you. And you struggle by not holding the gun correctly, you can get hurt doing that. Yeah. And we do not want that to happen. We want everybody to enjoy it, have fun, come back. This last year, 2 of our high school kids, we kind of badgered their mother into shooting. And she's quite good. Yeah, I'm sure she'll be in a league this next year.
That's great. Yeah, and so I at least what I would say is just people think that it's a trap range. Everybody's going to be super intense and kind of angry and I guess or whatever the case may be. But I've actually found it to be one of the most relaxing places in the area. Everybody there is so friendly, and I mean, not so laid back that they're not paying attention to what's going on, but I would say easygoing. I mean, my experience was that I struggled a lot, and I still do struggle from time to time. But I've never felt, looked down on or I don't know, mocked or whatever if I had a bad round. It's everybody's there is trying to encourage you, and I think every high school coach that is there and sometimes volunteers to watch the range on rotation during the public time has taken the time for me personally to give me a tip or two, and it's great, and they do that for everybody, and so I think the general feeling around there is that we'd like to see more people get involved with it, because once they try it, they'll see what a relaxing sport it can really be, and rewarding. Yeah. Okay, so the other thing I was going to ask is about safety concerns, about running a range, and what are some of the general do's and don'ts for if you're going to come to the park and try trap shooting.
Okay, well, we'll talk about a little bit. We're tucked inside of the state forest on both sides. When we set up the range, or when you set up a range, you have to make sure that all of your projectile is going to fall on your property, and so it's called a shotfall zone. Everything has to be in that shotfall zone. Ours is the fence out there, and so everything is inside our shotfall zone. Coming out to the park, it's a good point. A lot of people come out with their gun cased, obviously. So if you're coming out with your gun case, we actually want you to take your gun out of the case at the car. And the reason for that is, especially the zip-up cases and this and that, you're just reaching in and pulling out the gun. Well, nobody knows if the gun is closed, if the gun is truly empty. And when you're pulling on it, you can easily get your finger on the trigger. So we request that the guns come out of the cases at the parking lot. When they're walking with their gun, the action has to be open. Whether it doesn't make any difference what it is. Pump, auto, it has to be open. A breakaway gun, it has to be broken. And you come around to the front, you put your gun in the gun racks. Don't bring them in the clubhouse. Put them on the gun racks, and so that's the good safety part for us that way.
Yeah, and so that's the protocol for handling the firearm and kind of as you're walking in.
Correct.
And then what about when you get out and there's 5 different stations, as you mentioned. You take 5 shots at each station, 1 through 5. What are some of the rules or safety rules that pertain to when you actually walk out onto the range itself?
And the rules vary between high school and Amateur Trap Shooting Association, which is ATA, which keeps track of national tournaments, etc. For the high school, the gun has to be empty, and kids walk out on the line. They're allowed to put a shell in their gun, but they cannot close the action until it's their turn to shoot. When they're walking post to post, the gun has to be empty. How do you enforce that? You've got people watching, and when anybody is out there shooting, we have a range safety officer on site. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about something.
No.
Okay. Because I'm not shy.
Yeah.
And
oh yes, you have actually. You're talking about yes. I can't remember what it was, but yes, there was. I think at one point where I had the gun closed or something, and I don't remember exactly what it was.
It may have been a switch, and I was scoring or something.
Could have been that. Yep.
Yeah. But that's not it's not uncommon. We had an instance this last year, no, year before, 2 years ago, where we had our scorer go down to check to make sure there were enough targets in the trap, and as he's walking back, the guy on post 1 called for a target and shot the target, and he was still in front of the line.
Oh boy.
And that person was asked to leave the range for the day.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it kind of gets back to, though, I mean, looking, I know when you're the safety officer, like you mentioned before, you're going to call somebody out if they're not perfect, because perfection is the standard, and it kind of kind of just reminded me of what we were kind of talking about before, about when you're working with something like anesthesia, even, and this, it's that you have to be perfect. There is no wiggle room there.
No.
You're dealing with something that's dangerous and of course is perfectly safe if it's used properly. But when little slip-ups are made, they have to be caught by people with good eyes for detail. And
if you're ever out there watching, especially the high school stuff, and the kids come to switch, the person on post 5
mm-hmm.
has to turn to his right.
Oh.
He cannot turn in, because if you turn in, you're pointing the gun at the next person.
Yeah.
So they have to turn away to walk down. ATA, no, they can do whatever they want. But something I really watch is how are they carrying their gun when they're not online.
Mm-hmm.
And this stuff of putting it over your shoulder, or, et cetera,
mm-hmm.
no.
Yeah.
I talk to people every year about that.
Yeah. Yeah, because it just kind of goes right back to those sort of cardinal rules of gun safety, which is that don't point the firearm, whether it's loaded or loaded, at anything unless you intend to shoot it, right? Yeah. And if it's behind, if the muzzle's behind your back, then you don't know what you're pointing
what's going on,
unless you got eyes in the back of your head.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the shooting itself. So, what kind of, I know you said before that you don't really have to, you can be in a wheelchair, or it doesn't matter who you are, but what are some of the sort of the physical requirements or attributes that a good trap shooter might work on?
How long is this podcast?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, just the highlights, maybe.
The highlights. Yeah. There we go. So, believe it or not, number one is gun fit. If your gun doesn't fit you, if it's too short for you, if it's too long for you, if you're holding it incorrectly, if you shoulder it incorrectly, you're going to struggle. So, gun fit is number one. Position. Foot position on the trap. And you and I have talked about mm-hmm. foot position a lot. A lot of it gets to be what people are comfortable with, even though that's not what's going to work for you competition-wise. So you can show people and let them get comfortable with it and a little bit successful. And I've had kids that I've talked to and stuff, and they leave me alone, blow me off, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden they're shooting consistent 20 and 21, but they can't get above that. And my job isn't to get you to 20 to 21. My job is to get you 23, 24, 25. So my job is to get you the last 2 or 3. And so that's even more important of gun fit, gun mount. Where do you hold on the trap? Are you shooting with one or both eyes open?
Which eye are you dominant to?
Which eye is dominant? Are you right or left eye dominant? We have a bunch of kids that are left eye dominant that shoot right-handed. Mm-hmm. So they have to shoot with one eye.
I'm one of those kids. Yeah.
Cole Gertz, who is arguably our best shooter ever, is left eye dominant, shoots right-handed.
Uh-huh.
And so there comes a point where you need to let them get comfortable with it, even though you know that's not where they're going to end up. Mm-hmm. Trap gun versus hunting gun, that's 5 targets right there. Hmm. And the trap gun is a bigger drop at the comb, so therefore you cannot bury the gun in your cheek and look straight down the barrel, and you have to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think one thing that I've noticed about it is that you talk about all these different variables and, a lot of different moving parts here. Fingers, feet, shoulders, your face where the gun is resting. your eyes, your everything are moving parts. And to me, it seems as though what you'd strive for is just total consistency on each one, and trying to get everything just so, and then just doing that over and over and over again. So in that sense, I was actually talking to a colleague, Trent Wilcox, here about the game of golf, and I thought, there's a lot of similarities between golf and trap shooting, because although there's more, there's different kinds of shots in golf and everything like that, still, if you're going to be successful at golf, just like if you're going to be successful at trap shooting, you have to practice a lot and you have to be completely consistent
with the way you strike the ball.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't gotten into following through on your shots.
Right. Yeah.
Haven't gotten into lifting your head. Yeah.
Well, follow through, because when I think of follow through, I think of like when I was in 7th grade and we had basketball as a unit in gym, and they talked about following through when you're shooting that basketball with the, putting the wrist down like this and then just kind of going through like that. When I thought, I was like, follow through. How does follow through apply to shooting a gun? But so how does it?
Follow through. So any of our kids that are out there, or new kids coming, because
Mm-hmm.
my favorite math question and problem for them is when you're shooting a target from 16 yards, you're basically breaking it at 35 yards. And so the target is traveling at 42 miles an hour. Your shot is traveling at 1150 feet per second.
Right.
If you take your gun and you aim at that target and you stop it and pull the trigger, how long before your shot gets to the target, and how far does that target travel in the time it takes the shot to get there? Actually, so you have to change everything to feet, mile per hour to feet, blah, 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 blah. And shout out to Brent Ohms. 3 years ago when he was a sophomore, he figured it out for me in about 2 minutes. But the answer is that target, from the time you pull the trigger to the 1/10 of a second it takes the lead shot to get there, that target travels 6 feet.
Wow.
So if you stop your gun, you're never going to hit it.
Mm-hmm.
So then the question gets to be, can you break a target by shooting too far in front of the target? Can you?
Too far in front?
If you shoot in front of the target.
Yeah. Well, sort of like how a quarterback would lead a wide receiver.
Can you still break the target?
You'd have to be...
The head of the shots.
I think that would be hard to do.
Actually, you can.
Okay.
And the reason is, by the time your shot gets there,
Yeah.
it has a shot string of almost 5 feet long.
I see.
Because the front ones are staying at speed, some are slowing up.
Yeah.
So you have a shot string of about 5 feet.
And is that because the gun is moving? That's what creates the string, the motion of the gun?
It's the going through the barrel. It's
Okay.
going through the barrel. It starts spreading it out.
Mm-hmm.
It pops out, comes out of the shot cup, and some of them slow down automatically.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So the shot string being 5 to 6 feet long, if you're a little in front of the target, you can still break it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're behind it,
No
you
way.
can't break it.
No way. Okay. So, I mean, it is like leading a wide receiver in a
Correct.
way. Yeah. I mean, you can't be too far out in front, and so when you squeeze the trigger, it should be as part of a fluid motion then, right?
Correct.
And so like you said, you don't want to just kind of sit there and, come to a jerky stop and then try to shoot it, because that would be you'd be too slow. Okay. So we talked about some of the physical things that you have to do. I mean, just touched on them. Obviously, you could talk about a lot of these different topics for hours on end, like you mentioned. But what are some of the mental attributes that are necessary? Because, there's that part of it too. We can, be great in practice, or, kind of, again, maybe to use the example of like golf or something, but, you can have a good round playing golf. You can be consistent in your position, striking the ball, doing well. You've got that part of it, let's just say, down to the point where you're comfortable with it. But now you've got to perform, and that's a mental quality that you have to possess.
And we have several kids that are quite good shooters, but they way overthink it.
Yeah.
And we tell them, don't think, shoot the target.
Yeah.
When these kids have been with us for a couple of years, there is no target that they haven't broken, that they haven't seen, that they haven't been successful with. But you start thinking when you're out there, and you're gone.
Yeah.
From the time it becomes your turn to shoot, you mount the gun, call for the target, is like less than a second. Mount, call, boom, call to shot timing. All you have to do is be able to concentrate 100% for 3 seconds. Very, very difficult to do.
Yeah.
The best we all have emotions. We are thinking of things. It's hard to clear your mind. The other thing I have found with me is I can't be tense. And so between times to shoot, I'm concentrating on literally relaxing my shoulders, letting them go loose. And then when it's the time of the shot, the person before me is going to shoot, then okay, I'm closing my gun, I'm getting ready. That thing hits my shoulders, I want to have an empty head. And if I have an empty head, I'm going to do good. If I'm thinking, gee, I wonder what happened to that last shell that I had, I'm going to miss that target.
Yeah. So that's the whole idea of the pre-shot routine, which is also something you have to be consistent in, right?
God, I love you.
Yeah.
I love you. Yes, you have to have a pre-shot routine.
Yeah.
And some of our kids' pre-shot routines, I tell them, good job, you know. But yes, it's the closing the gun, the setting, the mount, everything is the same every single time from every single post. And if you can get a consistent pre-shot routine, I've got a whole pamphlet I hand out on the mental side of the game. And then they can go, that's all they got left then.
Yeah.
You know, that's it. If they've got the pre-shot routine and it's good, then it's just the mental part. We don't shoot for 25s. We shoot for 23s and 24s. And if you consistently shoot 23, 24, 25s happen.
Yeah. So, do you have is there any sort of general advice that's given in terms of that ability to empty your mind before going into the round, or is it just sort of we have to do what works for you?
Something that I found over the years is what works the best for me, and if I do it and I practice it, is I would take 15 minutes a day and just sit back, find a whatever, relax, close my eyes, and think about shooting a round of trap. From walking up to the gun rack, getting my gun, walking out to post, whatever, and shooting 25 targets. And of course, I can't miss, but shooting 25 targets. Where's the gun mount on the house? What kind of target am I going to shoot? Follow through, break it. If I can do that in that 15 minutes, that's the same as 3 or 4 rounds actual shooting on the range, because you've locked into it so tight. And it also empties your mind, because that's all you're thinking about. Yeah. The emptiest I ever had my mind was I came back from a friend of mine's funeral in 1977. And I was living in a little fishing village called Cordova. Alaska State Shoot was going on in Anchorage. And I stopped there to shoot, and I missed Friday, so I shot Saturday and Sunday. And I won both events, but my mind was gone. It was emotionally spent. Yeah. And it was empty. and that's the best I ever shot.
So you used all your mental energy. You didn't have any more to
I
spend.
had no mental anything left.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting thing to think, that we've got a discrete amount of mental energy, and if we can use it up before we engage in an activity that requires emptiness of mind, that might be a good thing to try to do. So, So I was going to ask also on this, is that you've been around the sport for many years. You've been in competitions. You've won competitions. What do you think distinguishes those who are able to be elite at the sport from those who can be, simply good?
Wow. I really think it has to do with trigger time. How many targets? Mm-hmm. Targets you shoot. The more targets you shoot, the better you're going to be. And back in the day, in trap shooting, there is singles, handicap, and doubles. Singles are shot from 16 yards. Handicap is shot from either anywhere from 18 to 27 yards, depending on your skill. Doubles are shot from 16 yards, and it's class based on based on your average. Back in the day, trap shooting is a money sport, and when you enter a handicap event, you can enter options, you can enter purses, you can enter jackpots, Calcuttas, all kinds of things. There's been some huge money in trap shooting. And back in the day, everybody was shooting for the same money. So the guys that were the good shooters, those are the 27-yard people. Bob Munson, who was from Minnesota, won the Grand American Handicap from 27 yards with 100 straight. And back in the day, they wouldn't share their secrets. They wouldn't tell you what their secrets were, because they were shooting and they're going to take your money. Mm-hmm. Then
like pool sharks.
yeah. Then in I think it's the 80s in the 80s, they divided up. So all of a sudden, the 27-yard shooters who were making a living off of trap shooting were shooting for their own money. They were shooting against each other. Mm-hmm. So they had to come up with something else. So now you've got probably 15 to 20 shooters that they give classes all around the country.
Okay.
And that's how they make their money still off trap shooting.
Oh, interesting. All right. And so those instructors probably go to the larger metropolitan areas and stuff like that. And
Harlan Campbell was in Bemidji.
Is that right?
Yep.
Oh.
Came to Bemidji.
Huh. Okay. My next question, I think you've already answered, which is how much does the gun have to do with it? But you said, I think that the gun fit is, you mentioned it as being the most important thing.
Gun fit is number one. Even if you have a field gun 870 or a field gun 1100 Remington, you can buy trap stocks for them. And that will take you from struggling to all of a sudden shooting in the 20s. Just getting a trap stock.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really is amazing that you can get to the point where you're in the 20s, but the difference between just being at a 20 or 21 consistently and a 23 and a 24 consistently is huge. I mean, you just said it's my job to get you to 23, 24.
Keep your cheeks together.
Yeah. I think a lot of it too has to do with the sort of that all that mental stuff about I hate this one position. I hate position 5.
Correct.
I hate position 1 or whatever the case may be. But always the same consistency, pre-shot routine, and just that trigger time. You can't. There's no substitute for it.
There's not.
So you're also a license. Is it a license? But you're an NRA shotgun instructor.
Correct.
And what is that about? What's that? Was there a license, or how does that work?
It's a course for that. Mark and Sally Stevens, they're down in Buffalo, Minnesota. They've made it their thing in life to work with shotguns and et cetera, and they put on courses for it. We're trying to get a course up here this next spring. And it lasts for 2 or 3 years. All of the things I've just talked about are part of that course. And you, as a student going in, even though you've never been involved with it before, they not only demonstrate it, but you go out on the range and demonstrate the same thing.
Yeah.
So when you walk out of there, are you Mr. Perfect? No.
Mm-mm.
But you've got it that you can take somebody and give them pretty good advice.
Yeah. Okay, and again, let's just say we've got a hypothetical person here who's interested in trying it out. First of all, when does the range typically open in terms of the season? And then, is it just basically you could just drive out there and talk to somebody and get started that same day, or just how does it work?
So our conditional use permit with Wadena County, we are allowed to open on March 15th. Last year we didn't get going until second week in April
still had
because
a lot of
that
snow.
friendly little snow. Yeah, exactly. But we open on March 15th and we go through October 31st. We're open to the public Tuesdays and Saturdays. And it is exactly right. You just come on out and we will do what we can to get you comfortable. You don't have to have a thing. We can provide glasses. You must have glasses to shoot. Mm-hmm. We'll provide ear protection. You must have ear protection to shoot. Mm-hmm. We will provide you something to hold your shells in because we don't want you
throwing them on the ground.
We don't want you bending over and picking them out of a box on the ground. And in a lot of cases, we can get you a gun that you can use for your round that day to see how you like it.
Mm-hmm. So, are there any other fundraising or promotional events that the club holds throughout the year?
We've sure tried.
Mm-hmm. Dinners or things like that?
Well, as far as the club, no.
Uh-huh.
But we sure tried. We tried to have turkey shoots a couple of years in a row. That didn't. The weather the first year was a killer. The second year, apparently, it rained. I was out elk hunting. Mm-hmm. We've had ladies' days. We had antique firearm days. Didn't throw a target on antique firearm day. Ladies' days have been fairly successful. We want to keep doing it because we want to get the ladies involved and to the point that they come out and possibly get in a league, to be honest with you.
Okay. And then there are amateur shooting leagues as well too, so for people to
We have league shoots we have league shoots every year. It used to be a 500 target, which got to be a lot for some folks. So we dropped it to a 300 target league. And people like Zach Johnson shot on two different teams. Yeah. So he shot 600 targets plus out there.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And it's, I find it to be one of the most enjoyable things that I've learned about doing in the last few years. And so I would highly recommend it to anyone who's interested to just go out and call me or call Burt. Go to the website. Does it have a website?
The shootminnesota.com is our website, and we also have a Facebook page.
So that's Shoot Minnesota, all one word, or?
Yep, shootmn.com.
Shootmn.com, and that will take you right to Huntersville Sportsman's Park.
Yep.
And then there's also a Facebook that they could look up. Okay. Well, Burt, I always end these by asking the person if they have any advice for young people like Caleb, not necessarily having to do with trap, but just general life advice.
Actually, I've got one more thing I want to say. Why did I get into all this up here?
Yes.
The reason I even got into this and working on building this range, my goal is to get youth interested in the shooting sports to qualify for the Olympics and international stuff. And trap shooting is an easy way to get into it. I know an Olympic trap is a lot different than what we throw out there, but it's still the basics. I'm interested in rimfire, 20-meter rimfire shooting. I'm interested in international archery, 70-meter archery targets. My whole thing was to build that so we could work toward Olympic and international shooting.
Yeah.
I know a couple of kids down west of here It's a young lady who's shooting skeet. She's been invited to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs for skeet.
Wow.
I mentioned Mark and Sally Stevens before. They have a couple kids down there in Buffalo that have been invited to Colorado Springs for the trap shooting portion of it. And that's my whole interest in this.
Yeah. Rimfires, thinking of that, has there ever been any interest in people trying to do something like biathlon around here?
We could set that up as biathlon real easy.
I was just thinking that with that
Topography.
and that layout and the rimfire possibility that if a person wanted to try, because I think it is just a 22 rifle, isn't it?
Just 22.
Yeah. Okay, so promoting youth and participation in even at the Olympic level, shooting sports is obviously a good goal for you. There's a goal and why you're.
And there's a Monaga kid who shoots in the Paralympic biathlon.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that. Is there a course down there or something, or how does he? Okay.
No, he somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now. Yes. Can I ask that question? What advice do you have for young people?
Enjoy life now because it's way too short.
Yeah.
And this is a 78-year-old saying that. And it seems like yesterday when Frank and I were going out to the range with a friggin' 16 gauge.
Yeah.
And it seems like yesterday.
1964 seems like yesterday.
It seems like yesterday.
Yeah. Well, Burt, I want to thank you for introducing me to the sport and being a mentor out on the range. As you know, I really enjoy going out there when it's open, and hope to see you more this spring and summer and fall. And thank you, and I really hope that people will give it a shot, literally and otherwise.
And I will say this. Anybody who's listening to this, who's out there listening, you come in this next summer and you say, I heard about this on Northern View podcast. Yeah. We'll give you a round for nothing.
Hey, wow. That is a first. You heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. A free round. So I wanna get some people to take them up on that. So please contact me, contact Burt, and mention Northwestern Voices. It'd be great. So thank you very much, Burt. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Zach.
All right.